Okay, so we are here nearing the end now of the story of the Churban of Yerushalayim and the Beis Hamikdash. As Titus Harasha is sent by his father, Vespasian now went back to be the Caesar, and Titus is sent now to continue the siege and ultimately destroy Yerushalayim. He said, "Where is their God?" There's a pasuk also in the Tochacha that this is what our enemies are going to say, and this is embodied by Titus. Where is their God? The rock that they sought refuge in. Zet Titus Harasha. This exemplifies Titus Harasha. In other words, Titus was not a person. Chazal is saying he wasn't just an anti-Semite and a person who was just looking for glory, but he was a person who was openly attacking Hashem, openly attacking God, and saying, where is their God? Where is your God now? Tough guy. And we're going to see in a second this is exactly what he does. That he profaned and blasphemed Hashem. As we're going to see, he wasn't just like a military leader, and he wasn't even just a sadist, of which he was both. But he was also, a person who was, against God. Ma'asan. Tafa zona biyado v'nichnas lebeis kodshei hakadoshim v'etzia sefer Torah v'over alei avera. He went to do what the most profane, blasphemous thing. What could he possibly think to do? So he took himself a prostitute, and he went into the place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the holiest place possible, and he took a Sefer Torah, the holiest thing possible, and he spread out the Sefer Torah there on the floor, and there with the prostitute on the Sefer Torah, he does his avera. V'notel sayif, and then he takes a sword, v'gider es a paruches, and he slashes the paruches. Right? He takes out his sword, and there in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the paruches is the curtain that separates the Kodesh from the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and he slashes the paruches. And Hashem made a miracle happen. And he made blood bubble out of this slash. In other words, literally, it's like out of a horror movie. Right? He slashed this curtain of the paruches, and as he slashes it, blood spurts out and bubbles out. It comes out. The Ksaver Haragas Hatzmo, and he thought that he killed Hashem, right? He saw this as like he conquered God. He conquered this God. Shnemar Shagu Tzorarecha Bekerev Moadecha Samu Ososam Osos. He quotes a pasuk here in Tehillim, Parak Ayin Dalid. Chazal quote a pasuk: Shoaga Tzorarecha Bekerev Moadecha. Your enemies roared from the midst of your holy places, from your protected places. Samu Ososo Sam Osos, and you made their signs signs. Meaning that you gave them signs of victory. You made miraculous signs, Hashem, of victory for the enemies to see that they, to make them feel like they defeated us. Okay, so the Gemara is going to just address this for a second. The Gemara is going to address, how could it be, that Hashem would allow this to happen? What unbelievable restraint that Hashem has to allow such a thing to happen for such a Rasha to come in, and how come he didn't have a heart attack right away? How come this is a big thing, because this is something that people I've watched a lot of interviews, people who've gone off the derech, and especially in Israel, in terms of Israelis, and a lot of people say that they always had this feeling like the first time they would touch a light switch on Shabbos, as soon as they would touch the light switch, a lightning bolt would come out and send them flying across the room. And when they do that the first time, they turn on the light on Shabbos and nothing happens, and they say, well, I guess it's not such a big deal. Right? So it's like this expectation of Hashem to miraculously intercede and not allow things to happen that are against His will. And when a person doesn't sees that doesn't happen, so it like undermines their emunah, right? And that's what the Gemara is addressing over here. The Gemara is addressing the fact that that Hashem allows these things to go on sometimes. It doesn't work that way. A person will never see somebody turn on a light switch and they'll fly across the room. That would be considered a miracle. That's not what we normally see happen. Normally there's Hester Panim, normally there's Teva, normally things work according to the way that they don't look unusual to us. But the question here that the Gemara is addressing is, how can Hashem tolerate that? How can Hashem let that be? A person is Machal Shabbos. That's even that. How can he tolerate? But how can he tolerate Titus going into the Beis Hamikdash and doing all these terrible things? So the Gemara says like this. Abba Chanan Omer, he says, Mi chamocha chasin ka, mi chamocha chasin v'kasha. Who is like you, the strong one, Hashem? What does it mean? What does it mean? The strength. Sha'ata shomea ni'utzo v'gidufo shel osu rasha v'shosek. Hashem, you show your strength. You show your hardness. Your chasin, your gibor, your gvura. You show your strength by allowing him to say these things and not do anything. Right? We'll talk about this in a second. Another pasuk, the Rabbi Yishmael Tana, Mi chamocha be'elim Hashem, who is like you among the powers, Hashem, Mi chamocha be'ilmim. We read that, we could read it, Mi kamocha, who is like you among the mute ones, not be'elim, but be'ilmim, among the mute ones, right? That Hashem remained mute under these circumstances. So I just want to address this for a second, this what the Gemara is saying over here, that this is Hashem's koach, it's Hashem's gevura. One would think it's the opposite. One would think it would be the opposite. The second that Titus walked in there and is about to do what he's about to do, so lightning should have come down from Shemayim and zapped him, and that would show Hashem's gevura, that would show Hashem's strength. So we know Chazal say, Ezehu gibur hakovish es Yitzro, right? Gevura is exemplified not by action, but gevura is exemplified by inaction. And the Gemara even speaks about this. The Gemara in Yuma says this. The Gemara says that the Chazal, at one point, there was a discussion about what we say in Shemona Esrei, and the question was like, how can we say Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor, Vahanora? How can we say those words when there are Ayeg Gvuroseh, Va'ayin. Where is Hashem's Gvuros when we see that there are Goyim, literally in the Makom HaMikdash, in the base of Mikdash, walking around? And the Gemara says, no, on the contrary, the fact that Hashem hears the boots of the invading armies trampling in the Makom HaMikdash and he doesn't do anything, that is his Gvura. That is the Gvura of Hashem. So obviously, this is hard for us to understand on the one hand, because we always are told that we're in Galus and it's a tzar for us to be in Galus, and it's a tzar for the Shechina, which is in Galus also. But okay, so if it's a tzar for the Shechina to be in Galus, so then just fix it up. If it's up to Hashem to fix it up, but no, Hashem operates in such a way that he restrains himself. He acts with restraint in such a way to allow things to happen, to allow evil to happen, like we've discussed many times here in the Shiurim here, that he acts with restraint because he knows what needs to be. Right? The easier thing, quote unquote, again we're talking about Hashem only in mashalim here, only in parables. Only the easier thing would be Hashem to react and to lash out every time somebody did an avera. But on the contrary, Hashem acts with restraint in order to leave a place for bechira, in order to leave a place for free will, in order to leave a place for the course of events to follow the way that they have to play out and the way they have to follow. So Hashem exercises restraint, but what we need to learn from this is for ourselves. We have to learn that Gvura is restraint. We have to learn Ezu Gibur Hakovish is Yitzro. That if we want to be like Hashem, being like Hashem and following in Hashem's Gvura is not lashing out and being harsh and harming people, Chas Hashem, but following Hashem's Gvura is restraint, exercising restraint and showing restraint. And even when it is that we do have to act, which should only be done, as we're seeing from all of these Gemaras, with tremendous thought about what the consequences are going to be, etc. But then also it has to be with Gvura, right? The Gvura has to be with Gvura, it has to be with restraint, and it can't be all the way. And that's really what's going on over here also, that the Chazal are telling us that where is Hashem's strength over here? Hashem's strength is that He allows this to happen, that He allows this monster of a person to go into the Makom HaMikdash, into the holiest place in the world, and to do this terrible Aveira here. Okay, I want to just make one other point over here, that those of you who were in class with me probably may recall me having taught you this idea before, but Rav Chaim Volozhiner in the Sefer Nefesh HaChaim uses this Gemara also to make a very powerful point, which I hope is okay to bring out on Tisha B'Av, that it's considered related to the Churban. But he says like this, that what Titus did by bringing a prostitute, bringing a zona into the holiest place in the world and doing what he did over there, so that's terrible. But he says, but you have to understand, it took place in the physical world. It took place here in the physical world, which is the lowest of all the worlds that exist, right? There's spiritual worlds and worlds of angels and higher worlds and all sorts of things. Right? The physical world, this place for physicality, is the lowest place of them all. And Titus's actions it could only reach that place, right? It could have no effect in the higher worlds because Titus is a physical person. He doesn't have a spiritual neshama that reaches higher places. So anything he did was only a defilement of the physical Makom HaMikdash. Okay, but Chaim Volozhin writes like this, that a person's machshava, every person is a mikdash ma'at. Every person is a Beis HaMikdash. Every person follows the same template of the Beis HaMikdash, and we have a mizbeach inside of us, and we have a menorah inside of us. We have all the different parts of the Beis HaMikdash are parts of a person. A person's thoughts are the Kodesh HaKadoshim. This is what he writes. A person's thoughts are the holiest, the most sanctified place in a person, or a person's thoughts, a person's consciousness, what goes on inside of a person's mind. That's the holiest place. And thoughts, because they're not physical, transcend the physical world. Right? So thoughts have the ability to go places much, much higher. Right? When I'm thinking things, I can think into spiritual places that are way beyond where the physical world can go. So he writes like this. He says, a person who has thoughts of Aveira, specifically of an illicit nature like this, a person has inappropriate thoughts of Arayos, Gili Arayos, and these types of things. So he says it's worse than what Titus did. Because what Titus did was only here in the physical world. Titus defied a physical place by bringing a zona into the Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim. But when a person thinks these types of thoughts, right, so it defiles on a much, much higher level, because a person's thoughts are be'etzem on a higher place than anything physical, and a person's thoughts are defiled in a much higher place. So when we look at Titus and we say, oh my gosh, how could a person do such a thing? How could a person bring such tumah into a place of such kedusha? Right, so this is what Chaim Volozhin says. This is how a person has to look at themselves and ask themselves, am I thinking about appropriate things? Am I thinking about right things and good things? And if I'm thinking about inappropriate things, so I have to banish it right away. I'm bringing something completely treif, completely tameh into the makom of greatest kedusha, in my being, which is my thoughts and my consciousness. So that's he writes that from based on this Gemara. Okay, let's move on over here. Ma also, so what did Titus do? Notolas paroches. He took the paroches, he ripped down the curtains from the Beis HaMikdash. Vaso kamin gargutani, and he made it like into a wine carrier, like into a wine skin. Vehevi kol kelim shebamikdash v'anichan behen v'oshivan basfinan leilech lishtabech be'iro. And he basically sacked the Beis HaMikdash. He took all of the kelim of the Beis HaMikdash, all the fine gold and silver and all the beautiful artistry of the Beis HaMikdash, and he wrapped it all up and he brought it back to Rome, lishtabeach be'iro, in order to praise himself in his city, in order to to bask in the haughtiness, the gaiva of his achievements. And we know that the Arch of Titus still stands to this day. In the imperial city in Rome, the Arch of Titus, this gigantic stone arch that actually depicts this taking place, depicts the Roman soldiers coming back and bringing back the kelim of the Beis HaMikdash, specifically the menorah is clearly depicted over there. And till this day, that Arch of Titus stands over there. There's a famous story that also I don't know if it's for Tisha B'Av, but okay, yeah, maybe it's not. Okay, but the Maisa, we have to realize that we're still here, and Titus is not. That's what we have to realize. But the Arch of Titus describes exactly what the Gemara says over here. Leilech lishtabech be'iro. He went there in order to praise himself in his city, to be praised, which is what they did. They erected this gigantic monument to this accomplishment here, and they minted a coin. They minted a coin about this also. Shenemar uvechein reisi rishoyim kavurim ubo umimakom kadosh yalechu v'yishtachu be'ir asher kein asu. So he quotes a pasuk here from Koheles. He's seen rishoyim go from faraway places and come back to their cities. Al tikri kavurim ela kivutzim. Don't say that they're buried, rather kivutzim they gather. Al tikri v'yishtachu ela v'yishtapchu. That they come back and they are praised in their city. Okay, so the Gemara just darshans this pasuk in Koheles to say that the Rishayim make the plans where they come from, then they go out and attack Klal Yisrael, and then they go back and receive praise where they are. So this is also something that we see. Times don't change, and our enemies still today are proud of themselves, praising themselves. When they come back after committing attacks against us. Okay, Mikam Yisrael. Amri kavurim mamish dafilu mili dematmin igal yeluhun. Some say that in the pasuk when it says kavurim, it really means buried, but it doesn't mean that he was buried. It means that he found the buried treasures of the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so now this is what happened. Now we're going to see the undoing of Titus. We're going to see what became of this Balgaiva, what became of this person. So as he's in the sea, he's on the high seas, bringing back all of these spoils to Rome. Omadalov Nachshal Shevayam Letovo. So there was a hurricane, like a big sea storm, came in order to drown him. So Amar, so look what he says. This Rasha Kimeduma Ani. It seems to me she'elokehem shel elu, that the God of these guys ein gvuraso elo b'mayim. His strength is only in water. Ba paro tavo b'mayim. Paro came and he drowned him in water. Ba Sisra tavo b'mayim. Sisra came, he drowned him in water. Afu omed alai l'toveni b'mayim. He also wants to drown me in water. Maybe he's only a water god. Im giborhu, if he's really a powerful god, yala li'abasha v'yase mi milchama. Come on to dry land. Do battle with me here. Do battle with me on land. Yotzasa baskol va'amralo. So a voice came out from Shemayim and said, Rasha ben beno shel Esav Rasha. Rasha, Titus, you're a Rasha, and your father of Vespasian was also a Rasha, and you're the grandson of Esav, who's the father of all of Edom, who's also a Rasha. Birya kala yeshli beolami v'yetushma. I have a teeny, tiny little creature in my world, and it's called a yetush. A yetush is either a gnat or a mosquito, whatever, some tiny little bug, a teeny weeny little bug. Amai karile birya kala. Why is it called the birya kala? Why is it considered such a lowly creature? The ma'ala isle umfakna lesla. Okay, this is all to be understood. Al pi. So it only takes in and it doesn't take out. Okay, what's up? Aleli abasha v'tasa ima l'malchama. Rasha, Titus, go on to dry land and do battle with me, but you're going to do battle with the lowliest of my creatures, with just this little net, this little thing. Aleli abasha. So he went on to dry land. Ba yatush v'nichnas b'chotmo. So this Yetush went up into his nose, but nokar b'mocho sheva shanim, and it picked at his brain for 7 years. For 7 years now, Titus is going to suffer with this creature inside of his brain, causing him tremendous tzaros. Yom echad, so he has this like sound. It sounds like it was like a tinnitus or something like that going on in his brain. This like ongoing sound of this gnat gnawing away there inside. So one day he was walking along. Kachalif above the Beinafla. He walked past the stall of a blacksmith. Shama kola arzafta. He heard the sound of the hammer banging from the blacksmith. Ishtik. And when he heard that, then the gnat in his head was quiet. So he realized there was some sort of like an antidote here. Omar ikatakanta. He said, "Oh, there's a cure." Kol yoma maisi nafcho mochu kamei. So all day long he would have blacksmiths there banging and doing. He would hang out with the blacksmiths all day. The to a guy blacksmith he would pay 4 zuz to do this work. The Yisrael he wouldn't pay at all. To a Jew, it's enough that you're seeing me suffer, so he wouldn't pay the Jewish slaves to be the. In other words, the non-Jewish blacksmiths that he would pay to make the noise so that his this noise in his head would go away. He would pay them, but the Jews he would tell them it's enough for you to see me suffer. That's worth everything. So he wouldn't pay them. Ad flasin yamin avhachi, for 30 days this worked. Mikan ve'ilach came into dash. After that point, since the little gnat already got used to the noise, so it became accustomed to it. It stopped being affected by it, and it no longer stopped its noise. So basically, the antidote worked for 30 days, and then after that, he had no more chance. Tanya Amari Pinchas ben Aruva. So Pinchas ben Aruva says, "Ani yisi ben Gedoli Romi kashemes. Ani ben Gedoli Romi. I was among the prominent people in Rome during this time. There was a Jewish person who was among the prominent people, like we saw earlier. There was somebody like that as well. Ukashemes, when Titus died, patzu esmocho, they cracked open his skull. Umatzu bo katzipor drawer mishkal shnei sloim. They found in there something the size of a bird, weighing about an ounce. 2 slimes, like 2 coins, about the size of an ounce. But Masnisa Tana, Kigozel ben Shana Mishkal Shnei Litrin. It was the size of a pigeon weighing 2 pounds. Okay, so in other words, this tiny bug entered into his nose and burrowed itself into his brain and stayed there for a period of time. And there's a question about how big it was when it came out, if it was 1 ounce or if it was about 2 pounds. We have a tradition, Abaye says, that its mouth was of nechoshes, of copper, and its nails were of iron. Okay, in other words, it was some very nasty looking creature that was eating away Titus's head. Kikave Kamayis, when he was dying, Amar Lahu, so he said to his helpers over there, Liklavle Lahu Gavra, burn me when I die, you should cremate me. V'livdri likitmi ashiva yami, I want you to spread my ashes over the 7 seas. So that the God of the Jews shouldn't find me and stand me up to judgment. In other words, he knew he was going to suffer and have to pay for what he did. He knew there was going to be some sort of a reckoning, but he was trying to get out of it by having himself burned and spread over the 7 seas. Okay. There's really a side point now. We're almost at the end of the Gemara of this story, and then it goes on to other things, which maybe we'll do later. But the Gemara goes on here to tell a story about Onkelos. Onkelos, who wrote the Targum on Chumash, so he was a ger, he was a convert, and the Gemara discusses about what he did in his process of becoming a ger, of wanting to become a ger. That he raised various people with necromancy, with black magic. He raised various Rishoyim, and he asked them. So I'm just going to read you about Titus because that's really what's pertinent to our Gemara, and then we'll finish up. Onkelos bar Klunim is bar Achte de Titus have. So Onkelos was the nephew of Titus. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. They were related. They were a familial relation. So he was considering being the guy, or Onkelos, not Titus, was considering converting. Ozol aske le Titus benegida. So he raised Titus with black magic, necromancy. Armalei, and he asked him, Man chashiv bahu alma. Now that you're in the true world, the olama emes, so who's considered chashiv over there? In other words, I'm considering joining the Jewish people, so you could see everything with clarity. So who's chashiv over there? Amalei Yisrael. He said the Jews. Mahu ledvuke bahu. He asked him, should I join up with them? Should I cling to them? Amalei milayu nefishin. There are too many laws, too many halachos, too many laws that they have to follow. V'lo matzis likiuminhu, and you will not be able to do it. Lo matzis likiuminhu. You will not be able to fulfill all of their laws. Zil igri bahu. On the contrary, I have better advice for you. Go and attack them. Bahu alma, in that world, v'havis reisha, and you'll become a king, you'll become a leader. D'chsiv hayu tzarei ala rosh, because the pasuk says those who attack Klal Yisrael, those who cause tzaros to Klal Yisrael, they are made into rosh, they are made into leaders. So that's what kol hamitzer nasa rosh. Anybody who causes tzar to Klal Yisrael, so their stature goes up in the eyes of the world. So, as you just point out from here, an interesting thing, Rav Dessler points this out, that Titus, even after his death, and even after being in the Olam HaEmes, was still a Rasha. He still retained his personality, he still retained his perspective, and even though he saw the truth, he was forced to still have his evil views. Okay, it's a whole other discussion, but you see that from this Gemara, that when a person dies, people think when I die, okay, I don't know, it's some other entity, it's something else. It's not. It's me. It's exactly me with my personality and my thoughts and my memories and everything. I'm just moving from a physical existence to a spiritual existence, but my way of thinking and my perception of things and my personality are still going to be a part of me, whatever that means, without a body. But you see that from this Gemara as it continues also from other people, which we're not going to go through now. So he asked him, Titus, so what's your judgment? How are you judged over there? Amrlei, b'mai de pasik anafshe, with what I set for myself, with what I set up for myself. Kol yoma mekanshile lakitme v'dainile. Every day they gather together my ashes and they judge me. V'kolule, and then they burn me. Umevadru ashav yame, and then they scatter me among the 7 seas. In other words, every day Titus goes through this suffering of being burned and scattered, and burned and scattered, and gathered and burned and scattered. Now, what exactly this means, if this is something spiritual, possibly it could mean that he's brought back in in a reincarnation of some animal or a person or something that is burned alive every day, and he suffers that every single day. The suffering of burning. I don't know exactly what it means, but that's what the Gemara says. Okay, the Gemara finishes now. Tanya Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar sums up this entire story. We're now on Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. The Gemara sums up the entire story by saying the following. Bo re'ei kama gedula kocha shel busha. Come and see how great is the power of shame. Sharei Sayah Kadosh Baruch Hu is Bar Kamsa, because Hashem, because of the shame that Bar Kamsa endured, Hashem joins forces with him. Hashem joined him, gave him Siyata Dishmaya, the Hichrav is Beso V'Saraf is Heichalo, and as a result of that, it led to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash and the burning of the Heichal, the burning of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So we'll finish with what we started with, the whole story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa. Sharei Siyah Kadosh Baruch Hu is Bar Kamsa, right? Kama Gedola Kocha Shel Busha. How great is the koach of busha when a person is embarrassed, when a person is ashamed, when a person undergoes busha. Yeah. So they get tremendous siyata d'shmaya. They get a tremendous boost of koach from Hashem. And we see that Hashem helped Bar Kamsa with the siyata d'shmaya to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. And like I've said 100 times, we know the idea of midah tova meruba, that for the good is always better, it's always more powerful, it's always more potent than the bad. And if he would have tried to channel this busha for good, imagine the siyata d'shmaya he would have had, imagine the help from heaven, imagine the help from Hashem he would have had, and how he would have been able to turn his life around, and who knows what. Like I said, save the Beis HaMikdash. He could have, who knows what, I don't know, been Mashiach, I don't know. I mean, you see an amazing thing, right? The help that Hashem gave him the ability to lead on a path of destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. If he only would have used it for good, how would we be praising him today? Maybe today would be his Yom Tif. It would be Bar Kamsa Day, Bar Kamsa Day, for overcoming this Yetzer of being embarrassed. We have to learn from this. Mamish, anytime we're embarrassed and shamed in public, it's a terrible thing, a terrible feeling. But think about this. Think about, I get Siyata D'Shmaya as a result. It's like I've been killed. It's like a kapara for Misa. And again, we should be zoche to take these Gemaras, take the message, Ashrei Adam Afachi Tamid, think about the consequences of our actions, think long term. Hashem should help us. It should be the last year that we're sitting on the floor, last year of Tisha B'Av, running these Agadatas.